All right.
Hello. Here we are.
Hi. Welcome, Erin.
Hi, Erin.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
It's graduation time, isn't it?
How
That's
did
right.
that happen?
Already.
I know I have my son is graduating here this year. One of my boys. So yeah, he had a very tough final yesterday that he passed with flying colors, and so that was. But he was really worried about it because it was math, and that is not like his strong suit. So,
Right.
But he came through. It was great. So
well,
proud
that
of
is true. Actually, it's really odd because two of my cousins were, well, one of them is one of our speakers. Her name is Julie Davis Miller.
Right.
Her son's graduating. And then my other cousin, Blake, his son's graduating. And then my son's graduating as well from high school. But I really think that this whole working from home has been making it really tough. You're not alone, Sam. It seems like a lot of kids have struggled getting through high school and worried about graduating during the COVID doing online classes, right?
Yeah. And there's I think there's a couple things that led up to that. I mean, of course, one is we switched the game on them, right? They're working, not in school and at home. And so that's hard. But then at the beginning, schools were so kind of lax about everything. They kind of made it super easy on students. And then they started tightening the reins significantly over the year. And so kind of in going through that on the students' perspective was a change that they had to adapt to. So,
well, my son's in animation, and he's more of an artist online, yes. And so he's not like believe it or not, we are a lot alike, but we're very diverse in the fact that I'm very outgoing. I'm always online. I'm always on my social media, and my son's more of an introvert, so he actually enjoyed working from home on doing his online classes. Yeah. He didn't really care about the going back and dealing with all the, the socialites at high school. So he's doing good. But yeah, my other cousin said that, yeah, it's been a little bit challenging this year, but they're getting through. They're strong kids.
That's great. I didn't know that.
Our kids being resilient.
Yep, that's right. All right, so we have some of our attendees that are coming on, and some of our regulars. So welcome, everyone. We're just having a chat until we start in a few minutes.
Yep.
You all grab your coffee. It's going to be a really good session with Erin. So yeah, a couple more minutes and we'll get started.
Yeah, Erin, is this your third time, or you said third time you've been with us, right?
Nice. It's been fun to see the evolution of everything. It's been a different setup every time that I've come, as you all are honing the way that you want to deliver great content to people. So
right.
Great.
Yeah.
We're definitely more conversational now, not so slide aspect. People are tired of seeing slides and decks.
More interaction, more community, and
more discussion type.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Right.
We'll be like the second half of Good Morning America.
Right.
There we go.
Yeah, in Good Morning America, they're all sitting at home too. It's funny. And it's not always the cleanest, cutest backgrounds either, even on the most professional.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But see, if you want to make it work, you'll make it work, no matter the obstacles. So it's a good example for us all.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you have internet and good audio, that's always been my challenge.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. I live in the mountains and the internet is hit or miss. So I am keeping my fingers crossed that we're good today.
Good. Today. If not, we'll just talk over you.
Yeah, and we're going to get started here in just a moment. But that's another topic we should talk about is connectivity too, because it's so important as far as remote work. And so let's bring that up as well.
True.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen here. We can kick things off. All right.
All right, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for another session of the People Strategies Forum. I know that we have a few regulars on here, so I know that this gets a little bit repetitive for you, but if there is anyone brand new joining us, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. And a little bit about what we do here at the People Strategies Forum. We're here each and every week with a brand new guest speaker. And it's pretty much a mastermind of leaders. And our goal is to create workplaces where people thrive, where employers reward, and customers love. So it helps a little bit of everybody. And if you enjoyed today's session, definitely tell some coworkers, your friends, family, anyone that you think might actually benefit from these types of sessions, because we want to, encourage more people to come. We want to spread the message everywhere we can. And today we actually have a really wonderful guest speaker. But before I introduce her, I'm going to introduce you to your panel of hosts. So my name is Jules. I'm an on-camera coach and I help moderate these sessions. And I'm going to be looking for your questions. So if you have any questions for our speaker all today, feel free to pop them in the chat box. There's also a Q&A box that you can put them there as well. And we'll get those answered live if you're on Zoom, we'll get them answered live today. But if you're on any of our other platforms, still drop the questions there because we're going to answer them at the very end of the session. So don't worry, we won't forget about you. And then also I want to introduce Shah, who is an HR expert. She specializes in talent management. She runs her own company. And we all just found out that she now has 30 employees under her. So that is really amazing. It just shows like what you can do with a lot of determination and hard work. And I think today's session is going to be great for Shah because we're talking about working from anywhere. So, you have a lot of experience with that as we've learned over the last few months. And
go back and look at all the videos. You'll see me everywhere.
Backdrop every week. It's like, I think I liked the mirror with the sun shape. That was
that was the best. The big old sun behind me.
Always bright and sunny. And then Sam, of course, our founder and CEO of Comp Team, he brings us these sessions each and every week. So it's because of Sam, we can have a great speaker. He finds them, he brings them on, and his specialty is compensation programs, talent management. And so that is our panel. We're missing Samit today, so hopefully he will be able to come back to us soon. And I'm going to introduce our wonderful guest speaker, Erin Greylick. So a little bit about Erin. If you have tuned into the forum before, you may have seen her speak. This is her third time speaking. So she's good when she's back for a third time around. So a little bit about Erin. She is an organizational effectiveness consultant. She is the founder of Core Consulting and Coaching, which specializes in strategic change and executive development. She has a Ph.D. in organizational behavior, as well as a master's in clinical psychology. Busy lady, obviously very intelligent, working hard, and a mother as well. And she's worked with both in the private and public sectors in a wide range of industries. And I think also the US Army is one of I wouldn't say you've worked with the US Army, you've worked with Taco Bell and the Yum brand. So she has a lot of experience, and she is going to be talking to us today about working from anywhere, because as we know, the past year has seen a big shift in the way we work. We're working from beaches, from home, from cafes, you name it. So welcome, Erin. Welcome back, I should say. And we're excited to hear your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Jules. It is my absolute pleasure to join the People Strategy Forum again. I cannot imagine a more relevant and top of mind topic right now for businesses and CEOs and leaders than how in the world we are going to get back to work. Now that we've had, over 50% of our population vaccinated, what is it going to look like when we actually get back into the office? And what I've done is spend a lot of time reading about what we've learned, but also where we're going next. So just to share some things that we have learned from the 15 months of working from home, really kind of a forced experience for us all. But what we saw was, man, we are amazing, because one of the things that historically people have said about why work from home would never work is because it, of course, is going to be people distracted and playing with their dogs and, getting out and about and taking walks in the middle of the day. Well, what we found out was that productivity actually increased while people were working from home. Right. So that idea of not being able to trust our employees enough was absolutely debased. The other things that we saw was increased work satisfaction, increased employee engagement, decreased absenteeism, and better retention. So there were so many pluses for us as an organization, as well as on the individual level, because of course, as employees, we didn't have to commute. That extra time that we had every day meant that we had a little bit more time to do something that might have been more important to us personally that we couldn't otherwise fit into our days. We also had better work-life balance. We reported less stress in a lot of circumstances. And when you think about the research that was done in trying to figure out how everybody was doing when we were working from home, the most amazing thing was that everybody was in the house. It wasn't just the worker or the spouse working as well. It was kids, it was everyone in the house. So to think about the impact of that and productivity still being measured to 20% or higher more than when we are working in the office is remarkable. And of course, our planet benefited too. So there are tons and tons of upsides. And one of the biggest things for CEOs to keep in mind is that we as employees know the success of working from home now. And we've demonstrated it for 15 months, which means that their expectations are that there's going to be some offer of work from anywhere. And in fact, what research has found is that employees are willing to walk away from positions that do not offer some amount of flexibility at a rate of 1 in 2. So they are serious about wanting organizations to figure out how you can take the best of working from home or working from anywhere and combining it with how we work in the office going forward.
Yes, and Elaine and Blennis, hey Elaine, I was just about to share that Google, by the way, Elaine, you and I must be on the same Facebook page. And it says Google's 3-word plan for returning is the best ever I've seen. So Erin, I thought you might be interested. So you guys want to know what the 3-word plan is? Let me see if I can find it. It is flexibility and choice. And so it's so funny because as you all know, I have this small company, nothing like Google, but we are kind of in a position where we can't necessarily have flexibility and choice because of we have a public facing type of business. But some of our senior leaders are encouraging as much working from home with flexibility and choice as we can. And so it has been a bit of a challenge. So we do appreciate your insight because all companies, large and small, are going through this transformation, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And one thing that I would add is that, you know, right now there's a bit of a crisis as far as finding talent and getting people, you know, to show up at the office and finding those individuals to show up for the regular 9 to 5 that once was. And so and I think a lot of that has, if I'm speculating in a bit, but I imagine a lot of those individuals that had the 9 to 5, that working at some of those entry level positions, you know, found themselves at home, and those that were trying to be productive probably found ways to work into that knowledge field, and probably there's less people that are in those low level entry level jobs. But I don't know. What do you think, Erin?
I do think that there is limitations as to how much we can offer that work from anywhere, depending on what the job is. So yes, when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to services that are provided directly to customers, those are not going to be industries that you can consider offering a work from anywhere type of model. Yeah. That is going to be something that could very well be a motivator for people if they do feel like they really want that opportunity, that they would want to move into a knowledge-based role instead of something that is more customer-facing, possibly, or production.
Well, I would say that we have a teledoc. A lot of doctors are now doing their consultations or their discussions with the patients from home. And so our company utilizes telemedicine a lot, and not necessarily, you know, having an actual doctor on physical site. So I think that is transforming, and those are high level paying positions. But we're also seeing where we're getting ghosted a lot for the medium level paying positions, because we pay very well thanks to expertise like Sam. Thank you. ComPeam has helped us design our compensation strategy. We pay really well. We have good benefits. We have 401k, we have health benefits, and now going to offer dental as well. And we still have employees that don't believe that we offer that kind of benefits, and they ghost us. They don't even, or candidates do. And so we have multiple recruitment agencies trying to support us, but it's been a big, big challenge. Just to encourage, yeah, we're a great employer. We have a great culture. Work for us. But I think there's still that resistancy out there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people are reluctant to get back into the workplace and so forth. But Erin, as far as some of the reasons that you've heard, why are people slow to move back into the workplace, and what are the things that you've heard?
So a lot of it is just the unsuredness. I was reading something this morning about how people are feeling like the CDC said masks, 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 and then overnight said, okay, no masks. So I think it's the jolt of the information coming as quickly as it is, though it might be science-based. I think the messaging itself wasn't as well thought out so that people could actually trust that this was something that was scientifically grounded. I think another thing is that people are still trying to figure out, how everything is going to be kind of settling in, because schools are about to transition to their summer programs usually, and organizations aren't sure about what they're doing too. So it leaves a lot of question for people. So the thing that you were mentioning, Shar, in Google, that flexibility piece is absolutely spot on. One of the things that we have found is that it is absolutely essential to find out what it is that each one of your team members wants when it comes to flexibility and work from anywhere. Now, I know it sounds like a huge burden, but what I recommend for any organization that's trying to set up a work from anywhere is that you have guidelines that kind of set the anchors of expectations. So maybe it's, I want people to be in the office 2 days a week. And then everything outside of that can be somewhat flexible as long as you can get together with people that you really need to spend time with face to face when you are in the office. But it is asking those questions because it's really the only way that you'll understand where somebody is individually. And a lot of organizations are moving toward supporting giving free vaccinations on site to employees. Those are all ways that organizations are really signaling the importance of safety moving forward, though they also have their eye on getting back into the office too.
Yeah. So Christine, or Jennifer Christie of Twitter, she was on an interview recently. Now she's the chief HR officer of Twitter, and so she was on an interview with I think 15Five, a good interview there. And she was talking about some of the things that they were doing, and of course having that, and like you said, Erin, knowing exactly what your employees want as far as the work environment is critical. And she did a poll and found that 10% of the workforce didn't want to return to work as normal. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I misquoted that. So 10% of the workforce wanted to return to work as they, in the regular 9 to 5s they did. And the remaining wanted something different, such as a hybrid type thing or full-time remote. She found that most of the workforce wanted to do something like the hybrid, being in the office, 3 to 4 days a week, and then at remote the rest of the time. So, so I think that's the big trend. And as we've seen from a lot of our attendees on there, Daniel has mentioned that as well. I mean, there's a lot of individuals that are have some skepticism, or it's another shock to the work environment to just go back to the office without having some sort of phased or controlled approach. Would you agree?
That is a misstep that a lot of organizations are realizing after the fact. And what's happening is they've made their plans and a few people have been involved, or maybe, several, but not very many. And then they release the communication in one fell swoop. Well, when you think about how human beings react to things that are not the same anymore, right? Now we are 15 months into working from home. So the lead into the transition back is really as important as we were managing ourselves when we were first trying to get accustomed to working from home. We want to be having conversations. We want to explain the why. We want to explain what it's going to look like. We want to explain the support that's going to be offered. It feels exhausting. We as employees are exhausted. Leaders are exhausted. Organizations are exhausted. And all of us just want stuff to settle down and get back to normal. But we're not there yet. And it's not going to happen that way. We really need to put intention now. And I know this is the back end of our marathon, but this is when we have to put intention into how we are going to support and celebrate the time that we have in the office with each other and still be able to benefit from the opportunity to work independently from anywhere else.
Well, I definitely think it's very interesting because I have been the HR director, CHRO of multiple departments. And I love that Elaine joined us today because she was in charge of, I'm saying it wrong, sorry, Elaine, but it's the Health and Information Systems Department over coding and HIPAA and et cetera, et cetera. So she managed many employees that could work from home from a coding perspective in healthcare. Whereas I also was the HR person for like physician billing or IT. And I remember having a lot of very interesting conversations with leaders that didn't trust having their employees work from home and be very productive and constantly resisting that mindset. And I remember many conversations we'd have, like, how are you going to assure that, you know, the work environment is logistically correct from an ergonomics perspective? I mean, how are we going to assure that work is really getting done? And now I assume, I haven't really talked to many of those leaders because it's been a while for me, but I assume now most of those employees are working from home. And so I think that leaders now are kind of being, they're put in a position now, they have to make it work now. And then afterwards, it's like, oh gosh, my employee was productive. My employee was working hard. My employee did, you know, execute well. We just had to get over the hiccups of the technology problems or what have you. But once we got through it, boy, this was something to work through. So now we don't have to, you know, invest in all the real estate and the big office buildings and the cubicles and or the IT department in the basement as we had at one of my hospitals. So I think we're learning how to adjust, right, Erin?
Yes. And you bring up an extremely important point about trust. Right now, we have fully realized that, of course, we have no eyes on anybody when people are working from home. And so what we have found is that the more autonomy that people are provided when they do work from home, the more they feel like they can show up with their best every day. 15% more people reported feeling that they could be fully engaged in their work compared to people who were given less autonomy when they were working from home. So there is so fundamental to the effectiveness of working from home, that idea of trusting your employees, delegating, to the point that many organizations might actually have to look at how they structure their teams and possibly their work. Because what you want is that you have as much capability to kind of influence what your work is when you are working from a remote location versus having to check in with 3 different people in order to make a decision. So a lot of organizations are going to have to push themselves to see how comfortable are they in really pushing that authority down to the lower levels of the organization. But what you find when you do that is huge agility gains, because now you can have a lot more decision making happening where it should be happening and not bottlenecked at some higher point.
Totally agree. And I've seen that time after time in my world. And when I talk about compensation with managers, I mean, a lot of companies I start with, they have compensation decisions made at the very top. And once they realize that when they push that down and they empower their managers to make those right decisions, it not only makes the company more agile and brings up the competency of those managers, but they get better decisions overall. I mean, when those decisions are made at that level. So totally agree. I mean, empowering, I think that this work at home effort and this phase that we're going through is, or not a phase, this revolution, I guess we could say, is going to to empower managers to do better work and employees to do better work in their jobs. So I'm a true believer in that.
And Sam, I want to mention this, and you work with us on compensation. My company also utilized more about your talent, your drives, your competencies, and it wasn't necessarily about the numbers of product that was being, quote, sold. It was also about all the overall behaviors, as you mentioned, Erin. And so pushing that down, as Sam is mentioning, that my managers and my director and my other senior managers were able to take a look at behaviors, competencies, the ability to get the job done, and not necessarily count just the number of product that is being handled. So it has been an interesting transformation, but I feel so excited that we have, so up on the right of Sam's screen says TMA. That was so awesome for us because we utilized TMA to make that transformation. And it was more than just a dollar sign for each of our employees. So they've always felt respected. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, and so the TMA, which is talent management redefined, is about communication. And one thing you said, Erin, earlier, in when you were talking about getting buy-in for what the company is doing. So whether we were trying to get people back into the office, or we're communicating reasons why that they need to wear masks or get vaccinated or whatever it may be. I think that the most important thing is, and we've learned this from Simon Sinek, is the understanding of the why is going through that. And that was another thing that Jennifer Christie of Twitter brought up is what she utilized in the communications, her communication strategy with Twitter was really is not saying, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, is really making sure that the employee base understood the why of the decisions that they were making, so that they could get that trust and so forth. So what are you seeing there? I mean, with your clients?
So the idea of wanting to make sure that you have a good why behind it is actually not going to be as hard as leaders might think it is. When research was done, there were questions of employees as to what tasks were better doing them from home and what tasks were better for you to do in the office. And they were clearly differentiating that when it is deep work that requires a lot of concentration, that is when they want uninterrupted time, which happens so much more easily when we are working from home or outside of the office, where people can't stop by and strike up a conversation at a not good time for us. Now, they said that what wasn't as good to accomplish at home was teamwork, collaboration, innovation. So we recognize as employees the limitations of working from home. Just the idea of feeling connected with other human beings is difficult to maintain. And even those organizations who have been spotlighted in research and news that have always been remote are actually never fully all the time having people working at their own spaces. They bring people physically together. Mm-hmm. There is no substitute for you being face-to-face with another human being. There is a bond that happens. There are shared experiences that happen. It is a repairing and a rebuilding of a relationship, because distance does not help the park grow fonder when it comes to large networks like this. It's the same way that you can never say that, man, I would be totally fine with my spouse living on another continent and all that we did was talk on Zoom for the rest of our relationship. There is something fundamentally necessary about being in person. So as organizations are looking at, the cost savings of not having as many office spaces as they would need and reducing a lot of travel costs, factor in the fact that you have to have people face-to-face. So it could be the kickoff of a project and you bring the team together to start building relationships before they actually have to set off. It could be a critical moment where there are a lot of things that are shifting in a project that the team really should be face-to-face and be able to, in person and live work through challenges. Or it could be just a celebration. Like this is our once a year annual celebration of our entire company getting together. And the point is, when you get people together, don't overschedule. make sure that you have time built in for them just to be a human being next to another human being.
Yeah.
And we can form those connections in that in-person circumstance.
That's such
Yeah,
great advice.
Right. And I that's what we've been attempting to do is have a blend of both the Zoom calls with our staff, with our managers, also have the in-person meetings, even if we are like in another country, at least one of the owners or two of the owners is coming back every month for that in-person meeting, even through the pandemic. So assuring that we're having the personal protective equipment, et cetera, assuring that we're looking at safety. But we did have employees that were very feeling anxious, you know, that we weren't physically, they could see us eyeball to eyeball, even though they were seeing us just as often. And we were doing just as many Zoom calls and just as many in-person meetings as before. There was just a psychological aspect. They're not physically here. They're not physically supporting me. But I think now our leaders and our employees are like, well, they obviously trust me then. I love the autonomy. I love the fact that they, the owners really believe I can do this without them being there with me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And getting over that psychological perspective that we're really not around.
Yeah.
So,
but you highlight the need for that physical contact or not contact, but that in-person interaction that really is that shot in between the times where you are on Zoom or you are on phone.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so what Twitter is doing once again is they have their annual get together where they bring everyone together in a particular location, and they're still trying to do that. But and they used to have that on a quarterly basis, as I understand as well. But they've switched the quarterly get-togethers to virtual at this time, but the whole purpose of this is for the team to get together. I guess they're called one team type meetings or sessions. And so it's a where the team gets together, they share information on projects and so forth, and to catch up on where each other is. So they definitely believe that in time or in-person time is important, even though that they have moved to a largely remote workforce. So I thought that was really interesting. But another thing that's interesting is that was stressed by Jennifer Christie was the changing of the workplace. And so once again, we're seeing a morphing of how the workplace is happening, the in-person workplace, the headquarters and so forth. It's no longer the cubicle farm, of course, or the space where shared spaces, and they're trying to make it a place where people want to come to collaborate. And so they're repurposing some of the areas not to be, just desks, but different types of collaboration areas, that are joyful and you want to come to work, to be in that environment. So it's trying to attract our workers back. And the other thing that the movement I'd like to talk a little bit more about as well is how to conduct these hybrid meetings. And there's been a lot of talk and as far as how to conduct meetings right effectively. So in the past, when we had these virtual meetings, we've had, we go and look in at a conference room where there's a bunch of people, and sometimes the audio is not great for those people that are participating remotely. And so I've heard there's some trends, and some companies are they're trying to discourage the conference room environment, stay with the Zoom environment, so that they can ensure that equality across. Because one thing that I think that the benefit that the Zoom and the Teams and Skype, whatever you might use out there, is that it brings a sense of equality, and people are able to speak and be heard and be noticed a lot more in regular intervals. What do you think, Erin, about that?
So I do think that the way that our offices are currently set up are going to have to be reimagined, because of the purpose of being in the office now is going to be much more toward getting people to collaborate, to coordinate, to be around each other. That's where innovation can happen as well more easily. So the setup of offices will have to shift with that. And the idea of what it is that we are there in the office for is only going to be reinforced by the fact that our arrangement of furniture and spaces really echo the value that we have when we are in the office versus when we are working from home. Now, let's call a spade a shovel. Meetings have been horrible before we had to go and work from home, and they are still not that great. So looking at the opportunity that we are faced with right now is we can really rethink how we do meetings. And I encourage you to do that with everything. Think back to what you didn't like about your organization before you went working from home, and figure out how you can now address some of those, because we are all open to change right now. We expect it because there's no normal that we are going back to. We have to be open-minded and flexible to figure out kind of where our spaces are going forward. So when it comes to meetings, one interesting experience that I've had is I was facilitating an executive team conversation where they are located in a different state than I am. And what they inadvertently did was they actually had each person on a computer so that I could see the same Zoom screen, but they were still in the room together. And it felt good for me as the only person who was not in the room to be engaged with them the same way that I would if they were in separate rooms. But they got the benefit of being collectively with each other and having that spontaneous conversation, of which I wasn't left out because there was microphone wherever the conversation was happening and I could see facial expressions. So those are the types of things that I think we're going to stumble on in figuring out how we can include people who are not in the room with us, because there is serious challenges for any organization who's looking at going to a hybrid. And that is creating a two-class system. Because we favor the immediacy and the real kind of in-time feedback and information from people when they're in person, means that we can very easily forget about the people who are not there. And that causes people to feel less respected and not thought of. So what we want to make sure of is, as we are setting up some form likely of a hybrid model, that we are taking into account how, Sam, you were saying, we will maintain that equality that Zoom did allow us when we were all working remotely.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that was part of the discussion that 15.5 mentioned as their practice was they would have a conference room. They would all share a mic, but everybody was required to have their own camera on in their laptop that showed their participation. And that's really working well for them. So I'm glad to hear that that's working for your clients as well, Erin. That's great.
Yes. And it's go ahead, Char.
Go ahead,
Jules,
Jules.
sorry.
Go ahead, Jules.
Go ahead, Char. I just had a quick question kind of around that from our audience, because I think COVID safety is obviously a big concern for returning to an in-person work environment. So are you seeing that leaders are also not just implementing those changes that we just talked about, but they're also continuing to adhere to the COVID safety protocols when they're returning to in-person?
I do feel that leaders are staying very close to what the CDC recommendations are and following those protocols as they are looking at returning to work. What I see leaders not doing, though, is not fully communicating the timelines, the rationale behind the choices that have been made, really selling and reminding people of the benefits of why we want to be together and how we can be together safely. And so making sure that both of those messages are in your communication, I think is going to make the transition much more successful. Another thing that employees are really shifting to at this point regarding expectations of their organizations is that they have an eye on wellness. And this is going to squarely fall within that idea of wellness. So health and wellness while I'm at work, and how comfortable I feel, given that things are still shifting a lot. So making sure that you're taking the time, again, there is only upside for every leader slowing down right now and really making thoughtful choices about the way that you, are wanting to set up the way that you work going forward. And this is really a monumental moment for us, because how often can you reinvent the way that you work?
Yeah.
But this is what we're at right now. And a lot of people, a lot of leaders are feeling overwhelmed. And so they're delegating it. And I mean, no offense to everybody in HR, because I too am under that umbrella, but they're delegating it to HR to figure out the tactics of it. But it is so much more than that. Like, where's your culture going to show up? What does that look like? What does leadership look like? What does management look like? All of those things are going to be shifting for the reasons that we've already been talking about, and needing to take those into account so that you're making smart decisions and really bringing your people along, because this is a big change for them, just as big as when the light switch went off and everybody had to go and work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I just wanted to mention, Erin, I'm really reflecting on how I've learned to be a better leader this past year, for the fact that based upon the TMA process, I learned that several of my employees really like organizational structure and agenda and, process checker and timekeeper. I think I began to realize that when I had some of my other remote locations, like Montana, for example. When we facilitated our last meeting last year, it was really crucial that we had a very strict agenda. So every leader in the room, meaning even virtual room, had a voice to be able to say what they wanted to say. So it wasn't just the senior leadership doing all the talking and, tromping all over each other and interrupting each other. And I got some good feedback from some of my leaders. They appreciated that I took the time to bring the structure, to bring the organization to really concretely give a timetable for all the 2-hour meeting so that people could really speak. But I also reflect on, we also were using things like cell phones to dial in people. We didn't have, a computer with a face on it per se from some of our other locations. So I think your feedback about that is really, really crucial, because each of your employees need to be able to communicate and say what they want to say, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So go ahead, Erin.
So it's great that you do provide that structure. I think really one of the huge reasons why meetings have gotten so out of hand is because we don't think about what it is that we're wanting to accomplish. We over invite people so that there are 15 people there when there really should be 3. So that there's so many things that we really need to rethink so that people feel like it's worth my time. It is a value add for me to be a part of this meeting versus just eating up my time. And then I don't feel like I have enough to actually do work.
Yes. And so time is very, very important. And so I think that's another thing that a lot of the workforce has discovered, is that time is precious, and they've discovered how much time they're spending in their commute and how much time and so forth. And so I really think that this is the competitive issue that a lot of leaders are dealing with, is those leaders that are requiring people to return to work to the 9 to 5, like pre-COVID, versus those that offer a more flexible workspace. I think what we're going to find, especially in my business, is that those that are requiring people to come to work are going to have to offer higher levels of pay and compensation, and to attract those workers to get on the road on a daily basis and dedicate that time to that commute and being in that physical workspace whereas other employers that allow more flexibility, that allow that remote workplace as a real option, are going to be able to find a lot more candidates, higher quality candidates, and also less pressures on pay.
And when you think about what the pandemic has done, essentially with forcing everybody to work from home, means that your talent pool has expanded to the globe if you wanted to.
That's right.
Yes. Absolutely. There is a huge, and remember the statistic that 1 out of 2 employees will leave their role if they do not offer some type of hybrid, especially in a knowledge economy, right? It's all based off the knowledge economy. So we want to make really, really sure that we are making smart choices, not just to get butts back in the seat because we're defaulting to stuff that used to be kind of tapes that we played in our heads about work from home not working. Well, cat's out of the bag and it's not getting back in. So we need to be realistic about the consequences. So let's say you are a leader who says, heck no, I don't care what the research says. I'm getting everybody back in the office 5 days a week. I guarantee you And it won't be your low performers. It is going to be your high performers that are the first ones to say, do I really need this?
Yeah.
There was an article that recently came out within the last 3 days, and I apologize, I don't remember what the publication was, but they said that people were willing to do $30,000 less in salary to maintain their flexibility in working from anywhere. This is no joke. And it does not have to be organization against employee and feeling like, if one wins, the other one loses. There is a ton of upside for the organization. Now, it's going to take a whole lot more effort, but you know what? That effort's either going to be put in now or it's going to be put in later, because the fact that work from home is here is not going to go away. So either your organization suffers in trying to hold itself to the old way of working, and then 6 to 12 months from now, you're going to have to face that transformation at that point, while you have lost now talent that you really would have wanted to keep, versus being an organization that says, oh, I am going to pull myself from my bootstraps to figure out how I can make this transition make sense for my business needs, fit what my cultural values are, and communicate it effectively with my employees so that they stay on board. Means that you don't have to suffer for that 6 to 12 months before you actually put in effort.
Well, I absolutely love this, because we even have a real live example. We have a disabled employee that actually has limited mobility with his hands and literally is in a wheelchair. And we are very flexible during management meetings. By the way, from a career mobility standpoint, he is now part of our compliancy leadership team. And he literally is doing exercises with his trainer sometimes while he's doing Zoom calls with us, because he's working his arm or his leg, and he's literally on Zoom calls, and we're totally fine with that because he's got the knowledge around compliancy. And so it's awesome from an equal opportunity standpoint to be able to accommodate individuals with disabilities and in different backgrounds, to allow them to do these things from the gym.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's
Well, just
exciting.
think, well, that's the wonderful thing of that this working from home environment has brought to us. I mean, just remember a couple of years back when you were working at home, you were scared to death that the dog is barking. You're scared to death that your child walks into the room. I remember that seeing the news anchors that in the videos of the news anchors where their child would walk in.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they were just, in the UK, they were just petrified, they're like, oh my gosh, it's
the
like
mother that's dragging the baby out of the room.
yeah. And then now it's like the dog comes in, jumps on a lap. I mean, and that's something for everybody to enjoy. It's part of the workplace. Yeah, exactly. So it's I think that we've gotten a lot of benefits psychologically and to take the to make things more acceptable and more human. And so I think there's great benefits there.
Yeah, and also Elaine keeps bringing up the housing market now, and I think I saw her comments multiple times. I'm also in that boat too. So a lot of people are now relocating to office-friendly locations where maybe the cost of living is less, so that perhaps they're willing to take less hours per week, maybe not have a high glorious 6-figure income, as long as they have the flexibility to work where they want to.
Right.
Which is changing our housing market, because obviously housing is short right now. So
when you think about the impact that this can have on our society, it's absolutely exciting, because the equality that it can provide is going to be something that we've never been able to really reach because of kind of the path that we were on. You had to be close to your business, and your business would oftentimes be located in some more city, urban type of space. Well, then I needed to pay the high rent, but maybe that's not even the lifestyle that I wanted, let alone the amount of money that it cost. So one of the things that's so amazing is that we'll have more choice to be in the place that fits us in the lifestyle that we want to have. And so, and for those youngins, because man, I remember when I was in my 20s, I would have loved to have lived in a city. And to think that that is more affordable than ever before is really great. So it's that balance of really being able to have more choices on the table than we've ever had before this pandemic.
Yeah, I remember when I was a college student and I was living in Evans, Colorado, which is near Greeley, right next to Greeley. And my first paid internship was with the city of Westminster. So literally I was driving all the way from Greeley all the way to Westminster, which was over an hour drive, right? And I was doing that as an intern, a junior HR manager kind of job. I could have been doing interviews. I could have been talking about employee relations matters. I could have been working on the training manuals and the employee handbooks from my home office. Now that was many, many years ago, but I'm sure that's what they're doing now today. I should give them a call, right? As an intern.
Yes.
Hmm.
One of the things that they found as well, just on this topic, and Sam, I'd love to hear if there's another question that you have. But they actually have found that people are working longer hours. It used to be over an hour more when the pandemic first hit, but since then has slowed down to about 40 minutes more a day. So even the amount of work that we are contributing is in addition to being able to do all of these other things in life.
Mhm.
Similar to how, your employee was able to meet their trainer. I'm sure trainers don't want to be meeting people at 6 o'clock in the evening, and neither do
Right.
we. So that idea of just maximizing our time in a way that we've not been able to do before is a great win for everybody.
Yes. So what I'm finding is that there's some employers that are that are struggling with the 9 to 5 concept. It's like, oh, this is when we're open for business. This is where we come together to collaborate. This is when our customers come to us. And so they're in that mindset. But then they're finding that through this remote this remote phase or this evolution that we've gone through, as that certain people enjoy to work at certain times of the day. Some are more sharp in the morning, some are more sharp in the evening. And so what they've done, and this is another thing that was mentioned at Twitter as well, is coming up with these work agreements. So it's like if they, this is when I do my best work is during this time frame, and then they coordinate that with the team members so that they know when that person can be contacted and so forth, so that they can have that high productivity, that high quality of work when that person is ready to do it. But the bill is still out. I mean, you were mentioning as far as people are working more, and I think some of that is they're working more because there was no place to go, so they're in their homes. They didn't have the restaurant down the street or their buddy. They were calling them and say, hey, let's go get together and so forth. And so I think some of this productivity, I do believe it's here to stay, a good portion of that productivity, but the work hours may not necessarily stay. I think that there's some people that want those shorter work weeks, shorter work hours, and more flexible work hours that happen. And the game is not about how long you work. It's about the quality of work that you produce and the contribution to the organization and so forth. So I think that's going to be the new phase. Now, and I also think that is very linked to mental health as well, as we were talking about earlier, that there's been some benefits to mental health, but there's been some detriments as well, as people have been trapped in their homes, dealing with the stress of COVID and so forth. And so the statistics in the bill is still out as far as, how this is going to normalize in the long run. So I think we have to wait to see what the real statistics are for productivity and mental health and so forth in the long run.
Well, I think it's also about a courtesy to your employees. So for example, I remember what it was like getting, calls on a Sunday morning, on an Easter Sunday morning, and asked to put together power decks and things and bring it on Monday morning. What I try to do now is I simply text my leaders and say, hey, do you have time mid-morning for a quick call? I'll try to keep it under 10 minutes. And I text them that, and then they'll say, Oh yeah, okay, that, well, I have to pick up my kids from school or what have you, or drop them off. Can you call me at 3 instead of 10 a.m.? And it does help. And so when you talk about that feeling of pressure and anxiety and angst, there's simple little things you can do, like a simple text, that make it easier on everyone.
Mhm.
One of the things that we have to be really mindful of right now is that we have so many modes of communication, and to be thoughtful about the way in which people are supposed to use each one of those modes. So if there's something that's not pressing, can we agree as a team that we're going to use email to share information and updates and all that kind of stuff? If there's something that's absolutely urgent, then let's use text for those communications or some other form that you want. But it's really being thoughtful about the way you want to leverage the tools that you have access, so that there isn't that confusion and there isn't that expectation that you're supposed to be on. One of the things that's causing the extra work, I would guess, is because now we don't have boundaries. You know, my desk might be in my bedroom, my desk might be in my dining room, and so it doesn't feel like I'm really separating from work the way that I would when I was leaving my office. So helping employees figure out ways that they can truly disconnect, because without disconnecting, we actually cannot bring our best. It is physically impossible for us to be able to come back and contribute all that we can if we cannot disconnect. Which it goes back to, Sam, what you were talking about related to the time that we work. So anybody have any idea where we got the 9 to 5 from?
A Dolly Parton.
She was a wise woman who sung about how crazy the 9 to 5 was, which originated in the industrial era, when people needed to be at a factory at the same time, of course, because they needed to be able to produce things collectively. But oh my goodness, we are so far from the industrial era, yet we carry this forward as a necessary thing. Like, work has to be from 9 to 5. Not really. Now we're in a lot knowledge-based economy, and Sam, to your point, people have different parts of the day where they feel like they are at their best. So the other thing, as a total side note for anybody who's on the call, when you know you are at your best, don't be in meetings. Keep that time for yourself, and you will see your productivity go way up, because you are protecting the time that you just sing in. That's more likely where you're going to get your flow and your best output.
Well, I just want to mention, we also use GroupMe, which is an app on your phone for broad communications with everybody. It's called GroupMe. My employees actually like that. To me, it feels like a dopamine rush, right? Because as soon as a bing, 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 bing. And so, but back to the point about wealth or wellness, is being able to say, okay, maybe you should plug in your phone in the kitchen at night, so you don't constantly get that GroupMe bing, 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 all day long, because then it becomes kind of like anxious dopamine rush every time you hear that ping all day long, right? But there's some great tools. We openly talk about what our employees want and how they want to be communicated with.
Awesome.
I'm going to jump in because we're starting to run out of time. I think this sparked a lot of interaction today, which is so great. The chat has just been blowing up this whole time. So it's something obviously that everyone has a really strong opinion on. And I think a lot of people are leaning towards the working from home or from anywhere more than going back to the office, it seems. So thank you so much, Erin, for sparking that in all of us today. All right, so Sam, did you want to jump in?
So I just wanted to mention our sponsor, TMA. We didn't talk about TMA a bit, and they're one of our favorite conversational tools and talent management tools on getting to know your people more and getting to know about their work preferences, getting to know your work preferences as well. So if anybody would like to take a TMA assessment to see what that's all about, please feel free to sign up or send me a note. I did put a poll up for those that are on Zoom, and you can just sign up there. If you are on another platform, be it LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, or anything, you just reach out to me at sam@compteam.net. Once again, that's sam@compteam.net, and just connect with me, and I'll make sure we send one your way. So also, Jules, you want to go ahead and tell us about next week?
Oh, next week's going to be really exciting. So I'm actually going to be your speaker next week, everyone. So if you've been here every week, you know, I always introduce the speakers, and Sam asked me to hop in next week and talk about on-screen presence, because that's my jam. So if you want to learn a little bit about how to have better on-camera presence, kind of going off of what we've been talking about with Erin, obviously we're sitting in a lot of Zoom calls, doing a lot of things online. So it is really important to be able to show up confidently and, have a great on-screen presence. So join us next week. I will be your speaker. So
Yay.
I just found out about that this morning. So I'm really excited. And yeah, we'll just.
Oh, my.
Beautiful. So again, Erin, thank you so much for this session. It was really insightful. I think it gave us a lot to consider, a lot of things that everyone can be discussing with their employers when they may be asked to go back to work. I know some of our participants have been asked to go back as early as next week. So a lot of things to bring up with them and make sure we're doing it safely. So thank you again for jumping in and being here for the third time. Maybe we'll be able to get you in a fourth time somewhere down the line.
I so appreciated the conversation. Thank you for having me.
And so anyone that's interested in getting any of these recordings or materials that we may have, you can find those on our YouTube channel, the People Strategy Forum. You'll also find them on the Comp Team website. They're archived there, and they're on the live channel. So if you go to the Comp Team Facebook site, or if you go to LinkedIn under my site, you'll see those everything archived there as far as these sessions and so forth. So, but Erin, once again, a wonderful conversation. You're such a pleasure to talk to, and thank you so much for joining us once again on the People Strategy Forum.
Yes,
Thank you for the opportunity, guys. Great talking to you.
Yes. All right, everyone. You have a wonderful week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.